All right, so it is 7:02. I'm going to officially call this meeting to order. Because we do have remote participation, we're going to just have to take a roll call really quickly. So Brittany?
Here.
Dan?
Here.
Nicole?
Here.
Colleen here. Sarah?
Here.
All right, and I think we'll have a couple more members joining us. I know that there was some traffic this evening. So the first thing on the agenda is to, or maybe we'll take things out of order just to give some people some more time. So we can start with meeting minutes. We have 2 sets of meeting minutes to approve. Do you guys have any questions about that, or would you guys just want to, what do you want to do on that?
No questions.
No
Those are
questions?
fine. Yeah.
All right, so I can take a motion to approve the meeting minutes from August 8th and August 20th as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we're gonna do by roll call. Brittany?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Colleen? Aye. Sarah?
Aye.
All right, so those are approved. Great. That didn't take as long as I hoped. All right, so I guess we'll talk about consider to accept the lots 74, 52, and 48 at High Point Drive. Many of us went on a walk. Fiona, did you want to just maybe recap the walk real quick?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Colleen. So, as many of the trust members know, we met at the site. We did walk. We walked the properties and reviewed, kind of the site conditions of lots 74, 52, and 48. We were planning on meeting the developer at the site, but they could not attend, and I don't believe that they are here this evening. Excuse me, sorry. Here this evening to provide any additional feedback. I think Amber did follow up in writing with Mr. Barlow, but that's okay. So I think that at this stage, I think most members, Sarah, I know that you weren't able to attend, but we walked along the side and the rear of lot 74, which is probably the most buildable of the 3. Kind of evaluated the easement area. Walked into the jungle more or less located on lot 52. There was some prior infrastructure there on that site, but it still had a lot of potential in my opinion. And then lastly, we made our way up to 48, which for folks who haven't seen it, it is quite a grade change.
Very much. I am Mary McKetrick and I represent the.
So yeah, quite the grade change. There is a large stormwater basin present on the property. It abuts a area of dedicated open space. The abutting lots are similar in terms of their condition and homes around those. So I think at this point, I think that the trust will want to make a judgment call. We've been consulting with the ZBA vice chair, Mr. McCusker, who's been involved in this since the very beginning, and it is there's quite a complicated history involved with this development. But I think at that point, at this point, the trust just has to vote on what they would like, and if there's any particular questions that any members would like to ask me, I'm happy to do that. But I know that some, as I mentioned in the prior Affordable Trust meeting, some of the pre-development due diligence has been done. And I think, as part of the settlement process and kind of closing this out with the town, our town's council, 40B council, and the ZBA would like, the trust to just make a decision. So I'm, again, happy to answer any questions and, go from there.
Okay. Any questions from the members?
It's more of a clarification, and I just want to say that there's also money that comes along with accepting these lots as well, correct? For $100,000 to go towards helping the creation of building on these lots, or is it restricted at all, or can that $100,000 go towards anything?
That is a good question. I actually don't know if it is restricted.
Okay. I mean, even if it is, it just goes towards. Okay.
Oh, Mr. McCusker, you want to just step up so we can just get it for the record?
Yeah, the intent was for it to be used to help.
but there's no restrictions on it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
All right, great. So the motion should include accepting the $100,000 as well.
I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? Thoughts? All right.
I have one more question.
Go. Please do.
Did we figure out which ones are going to be the affordable restricted lots versus the market rate lot? And do we have the ability to switch
pick
them
and
around?
choose.
Yeah.
To the best of my knowledge, you'd have to come to the ZBA and ask to have it moved around if they don't line up right. And I can't imagine that would be a problem.
Right.
All right. But I can't tell you. I know we talked about it. I can't tell you which ones are affordable, which ones aren't. But part of me says I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Great.
Any other questions or thoughts? All right. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move we accept the lot 745248 at High Point Drive and the $100,000 as part of the settlement.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Are we just gonna give an RFP out to developer and then they can decide which one will be affordable and which one will be market rate?
I would imagine that would be the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do have to do roll call because Sarah is on Zoom.
Oh, all right. So we will do roll call. Sarah.
Aye.
All right. Colleen.
Aye.
Nicole. Aye.
Everyone else.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay. So it's a clear vote, unanimous, and congratulations. We are now the owners of lots 74, 52, and 48 of High Point Drive, I suppose.
Thank you. I wish we got keys or something. I don't know.
Right?
Will somebody be putting that in writing?
Yes, we'll have staff draft something for you.
And then just send something off to the ZBA. That'd be great.
That'd be great. All right. Sounds good.
I'll let council know.
All right.
Have a good night, guys.
You as well, Mr. McCusker. Thank you very much. All right. Updates on 17-27 Upton Street. Oh, actually, you know what? Before we get into that, ordinarily, what we do with the trust is we run through the agenda items, we vote on them, we move on. There has been, obviously, in town some discussion because we've been more successful than usual at moving certain projects forward, or any projects forward, really, that people would like to come here and ask questions. We're not an elected body. We are volunteers who are appointed by the select board to further the agenda of the Affordable Housing Trust, which is to create and maintain affordable housing in Grafton, which is a tough gig because there is nothing else in town that will get people riled up like the prospect of housing going in near them. And given my experience over the course of the past 15 years of doing this, I'm sort of protective of volunteers who come on this board and want to help out because of my own personal experience with doing this. There have been many, many times, and in fact, one in particular where I sat right there and was before the select board and was taken apart for like an hour and a half and just kind of berated because I wanted the money that we now have to pursue 17 and 27 Upton Street. And I don't want anybody else to have that experience. So that said, I also understand that, people in the town have questions, and if they want to ask questions of us about these projects, then, that's fine, that they can be able to. So for this particular agenda item, if anybody in the audience or anybody on Zoom has questions, we will entertain those questions. So we'll take, Fiona, if you have them, updates on 1727 Upton Street, and then we'll take questions. And I would ask people if they have questions to limit them to 2 minutes because we can't be here forever. All right.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So my update is that I'm writing the decision. It's a very, very long process, lots to review and, go back over all of the recordings. A lot of them are many hours long. The decision is underway. It is, we are planning to have it finalized and ready for a board vote on the 23rd. So we were going to try and get it turned around within our typical 2-week timeline. Just the level, the workload in my department, which, admittedly is my problem and not anyone on the trust problem. And I apologize for that, but, yeah, we just needed some extra time, and we should have it ready to go by next week. So,
Okay.
or I'm sorry, 2 week, the 23rd.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from members of the audience? Go on up.
Anne-Marie Foley, 45 South Street. I also serve on the select board, but I'm here in the capacity as Anne-Marie Foley citizen. So any comments or questions that I make or may make would just be of my own volition. Based on your little introduction there, I don't know that I feel entirely, I guess I for some reason heard that we were encouraged to come here to ask questions. So here I am. So I guess you can cut me off if you need to. So I just have some specific questions relative to the Affordable Housing Trust's contract with GSX, some of which have already been stated in public, and I'm not sure how many of them can be answered this evening, but at the very least I'd like to put them out there, and perhaps some can be answered and or can be answered in memo form, or perhaps you can direct me to where I might be able to find the answers. So the first would be just if you have a dated agreement with the GSX, the only agreement that I was able to find isn't dated. So I'm just curious on the dates, the date of the agreement, because then there's language subsequently that kind of goes back and forth relative specifically to that date. That's question number one. The agreement that the Affordable Housing Trust has with this corporation, it's been brought to my attention that this GSX Solutions LLC, a Florida limited liability corporation, in fact doesn't exist or didn't exist at the time. Again, it's unclear when this was signed because there's not a date on it, but as of like 9/22, that wasn't a corporation that you could find. Additionally, the Pennsylvania address, the corporation that all your bills seem to have the Florida address on the top end and then the Pennsylvania address kind of in the actual invoice. Like tonight, we'll be able to see it when you pull it up later. That also is not an active business, or there's no business there. The only business, it seems, is in Maryland, and in fact, that businesses are not in good standing. There were a number of items I know that came through on an email and had been brought to me that, then this might be more, through the town, things like W-9, insurance information relative to this corporation, this 49A, which is like a Massachusetts state law onboarding document. So those specific items, whether you guys have those or that that the town has those somewhere, I'm just curious how we can obtain those. Additionally, there was a document that I saw that instead of an EIN, it seemed to be a Social Security number. So I'm just curious, I'll stay by the mic. It's not in this document, but there was somewhere that I saw. Just wanted to confirm that there's an EIN and that this isn't functioning under a Social Security number. And that might kind of tie in with the issues relative to the corporation. That Grant Architects, which I think is on the bill today and has been on previous bills, that also comes in at this Sandusky Street, which I think is the Pennsylvania address, which again, when you look up, all these records are public. It does not appear to be a functioning corporation. And then just two last things, forgetting all this. The $15,000 a month, which I think last month it went up to like $25,000. Is that just like a monthly fee that was agreed upon for them, for GSX to oversee this project? It seems to come up many months, and I'm not sure that there's not an explanation that I can sort out. Maybe again, you all, having gone into this agreement with them, know what exactly that is for. And then lastly, on item number 4 on your agreement, relative to the grant, I'm just curious where the documents, where I could find those easily relative to the bill paying process, right? So there's like Exhibit B2 that talks about project costs, right? And then there's another exhibit, I think up higher, B1, relative to this 27 Upton independently living, that would talk about like capital and uses schedule. Also talks about budget. So I just wondered where those were. So again, someone like me or other people that weren't involved in this initially are not on the trust and maybe were part of this whole process, might be able to see, what the expectation is with all this money that's going out. And that's all I have.
Okay. So to answer the last question first, the expectation with all the money going out is to provide for the construction of about 31 affordable housing units. And
I understand
development
that,
of 130 units, right? So
It's more just it seems to indicate, and again, your bills are coming in with, specific line items. And in this, number 4, it kind of indicates that there are 2 documents that kind of show what those draws are going to be related to, right? So probably architecture. I've seen things about like a realtor fee, and there's a whole variety of things, but I'm just curious where I could find the original documents that would outline what you might be looking to pay. So it just is kind of under that number 4.
So when you're asking for original documents to outline what we're paying, what is exactly?
I know.
You know what you're talking about? Okay, go ahead. Why don't you
Page
address
number
that
2 under grant, it just specifies relative to the pre-development budget, which is what you guys are funding, kind of the pre-development costs. There'd be a project budget, which is Exhibit B1, and again, the document I have, B1 is just empty. So it's probably just a draft or something. And then additionally, it speaks to this pro forma development budget attached here too as Exhibit B2.
Okay.
So they're probably out there somewhere, but
Yeah, the GSX provided those to us, and our the trust council has been using those to qualify the
So-
reimbursements.
That's my copy right now. You're more than welcome to borrow it during the meeting, take a look at it. I know it's been updated, so this is the one that's actually referred to in the grant agreement. I found that online, but they have subsequently updated it and sent us another one.
okay.
But that's just kind of like their capital and like timeline that they were thinking.
Okay.
Fiona, you have a hand up?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. So there is a W-9 that is on file at the accounting department. I have a copy of that and I can share it. That verifies the EIN number of the company.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I've watched the meetings. Anne Marie, I've been a civil litigator for the past 25 years of my life, and there are any number of cases that I've had with developers, with contractors. Sometimes people let their LLC registrations lapse.
I understand.
You go back to the Secretary of State's office, you pay $500.
I know.
You get a certificate.
I had an LLC,
Okay.
yep.
So it's not really an issue from my point of view. Having somebody have a valid LLC actually would protect them individually in the event of a breach of contract.
Yeah, I understand
So-
the notion of the LLC. My question, I guess, would be, and not to interrupt, but just so that you know what I'm getting at, when you sign a document, so if I have an LLC, which I had,
Yeah.
and if I let that lapse, and then I sign a binding contract with my business name, LLC, and address, that would be, I would never do that. That would
Well,
be an issue.
no, you wouldn't do it, but it's not terribly uncommon. And if you did that, you would then be personally on the hook for any breach of contract for that.
Right.
So it really doesn't affect the trust, and it doesn't really affect the town at all. And I also will say, I watched the meeting the other night, and I want to be clear with the people who watch our meetings. And people say, well, this is public money. Kinda. This is largely a lot of money that we got from the Pulte settlement. So that's not public money.
It's about half and half.
Yeah, and the other part of it is CPC money, which is directed towards open space, recreation, historical preservation, and affordable housing. So it's not like this is money coming out of the general fund. And I want to make sure that we're all on the same page with
Yeah.
making the public
think people
aware of
understand
exactly
that,
what
yeah.
this is. Well, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't,
Okay.
right?
But about half of it is kind of taxpayers' money,
Yeah,
CPC.
and it is, and we want to be very, very careful with that. So the implication that I've gotten, to be honest with you, that we're not being careful with that is a little bit insulting. I think that this board has been very transparent with exactly where the money is going. You guys did an internal audit on us. We're going to do our own audit, as Colleen pointed out the last meeting that I know you were at. And this board is a bunch of volunteers who are trying to create affordable housing for people. And I don't think we need that sort of rhetoric, candidly.
And
Okay.
just so you know, the audit really didn't have anything to do with this project per se.
No, I know what the audit had to do with.
Okay.
And
just- that is
and
quite separate.
frankly, if I'm being honest with you, I'm glad it happened because that way we can just say, hey, look, everything's out in the open.
Yeah.
The staff does an amazing job of keeping track of money for us. And it's in what we do is a burden on staff, right? Like here's Fiona. Her job isn't to be on the Affordable Housing Trust. Her job is to be town planner. And yet she's doing a great job. Mary's doing a great job. So I'm glad that's out in the open. I'm glad we're all on the same page. There were a couple issues that Bob Carroll brought up the other night that really don't apply. We don't have an insurable interest in the project. We're not hiring anybody. We're just reimbursing costs. That's what grant agreements are for. So, I'm happy that people are asking these questions, I guess. I just want to make sure that people are coming here with questions of good faith to understand the process better and not to sort of hinder a project that, again, is going to be for the public benefit.
I would think that you can all see that I'm not here to hinder
No,
this project.
I
at all.
understand.
So I'm the person that's standing here asking you the questions. I don't know who you're referring to, but here I am. There's my questions.
Oh, I'll tell you, I'm referring to Craig Doffney.
So I'm standing here, Anne Marie Foley,
Yep.
asking you questions that I have. I'm not
appreciate
here
it.
on behalf of anybody, the board, anyone else in this town.
I appreciate it.
So I've been at every single planning board meeting. I started with this project at the very beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Going to Apple Tree and putting the pins up. So I just want to make it entirely clear that I am not beholden to anyone.
No, I totally understand. It's just that you understand from my perspective, and maybe I carry a little bit of baggage into this, right? Like we've been through a lot to get to a place where we can have a project actually put a shovel in the ground, and to hear things like I did the other night that people are calling in, promising, not just threatening, but promising lawsuits, is disturbing to me, and naturally makes me a little bit defensive.
Sure.
Okay, so
But here I am, never sued anybody, don't plan to.
me too.
Can I just recap the
Yeah,
big things?
thank
So,
you.
so the big takeaways for you were you want a signed and dated grant agreement, if you could. You want an EIN number, and
Which sounds like if Fiona has laid eyes on that and knows of a W-9, I don't need a copy of it.
okay, so we don't even need that. So
Correct, I just need it.
okay, so and then the last was a copy of what you have in your hand. That's my copy. I
Yeah,
need that
I'll give it back
but,
to you.
But at least so we've kind of covered all of your questions tonight. Then you don't have any further questions that you need answers to.
I guess so. What you're saying, we don't, or this board, I shouldn't say we don't mind that these corporations that are listed on bills and that we're engaging with may or may not be,
Can I take a stab at that?
yeah.
Sure, if you want to.
Which maybe it's not a yes no to your point, Colleen. Yeah.
So in terms of it bothering us, I think now that it's been brought to our attention, it will be dealt with.
Okay.
I can only speak, for myself as an individual board member. I am concerned about that.
Okay.
However, it's a very commonplace practice for developments to have lots and lots of corporate entities involved.
Oh, for sure. But
So I think the takeaway for me about all of the discussion about all the different operating entities is that we could do a better job vetting the partners that we have from a commercial standpoint, right, and a legal standpoint. The difficult thing for a trust in this situation, and I've observed this over and over again, this is our first time through this. This is the first time Grafton's ever done this. We did have a certain reliance on the town, which that I think for some of us, for myself, I can only speak of, it gave me a certain assurance that things like that were being handled because it's not something that I would have necessarily thought about. So it's challenging for a volunteer trust like this to the first time through get everything just right, and all of the I's dotted and T's crossed and all that kind of stuff. But I think now that it has been, the issue's been raised, it absolutely will be dealt with, and we will make sure that all of these documents are available and reviewed and available to the public and all of that. And the second thing that I will say is, I think there's a lesson learned on this project and all long-term projects like this that the town undertakes, not just the trust, but also the town. We see time and time again that people show up very sort of late-ish in the process, and suddenly have a lot of questions. And it's difficult when we haven't been almost over communicating and over pushing information, and but again, it's not just the trust, it's also the town, and it's challenging to know what people are going to ask about, having this be the first time that we're through this process. But I do think as a general point of improvement or opportunity for us and the town, for these type of long-term projects, having all of the documents, the executed contracts, all of that kind of background documentation that you're talking about, on projects like this where we know we're going to get a certain amount of resistance, and people are going to have concerns and lots of questions, because that's what people do, particularly with housing projects. It's just it's a feature of it, that we could do better, I think, at putting that information out and just making it available. I think we've done the best that we can. I think now that we're sort of on notice by, it's a lot of concerns in town, those things will be dealt with. But personally, I don't have any concerns relative to the entities that we're operating with. It's a real common thing, and I think, if it came down to it, we just need to, similar to the earnest money for the P&S, we just need to let them know, and they'll, they came with the payment immediately. They looked into it. Somehow it was missed on both sides, and it was remediated. And all of these corporate issues, it's the same thing. So as Mr. Prisby said, they'll just go to the state where they're registered and file, and then it'll be done. So
So if that you guys are willing to look into that, that'd be great.
Of course.
I appreciate that, Matt, and I appreciate your time. I think that, it's a complicated project, right? You look at the original PNS, it says, I have it over there, I forget the number, 50 to 70 units or whatever it said. Things change dramatically over time. It didn't change quickly, and you're right, it's people trying to stay informed, but on this particular project, I think with so many entities, including the trust as a separate entity, I think it made it even more complicated. And I'm not saying that the trust made it more complicated. It made this, trying to figure out the information and follow the information is a little bit more complicated because of the involvement of the trust, I think.
Do you mean the original RFP?
I think you meant that, but I also see what you're
Right,
saying.
it's
Like,
a
if
PNS.
you're looking at planning or you're looking at select board and you're not thinking to look over here, you might miss something.
Well,
But that's why it's nice that there are so many project pages for this particular project. One on ours, one on planning.
I think development generally is complicated. I think that when you're one of the complicating factors here is this is town land.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
you issue an RFP and there are rules for that, and we only got back one bidder, right? And I reviewed the RFP. And then you obviously the RFP is basically an offer to enter into a contract. So this particular bidder qualified based on the boundaries of the RFP. Then you enter into a purchase and sale agreement. But once you do that, so long as the project largely complies with the RFP, then the developer goes and develops. And of course, over the course of the past 5 years, as you probably know, the market has changed drastically, not only for demand for commercial, which is way down, and demand for residential is way up. But also, you get into site conditions. So the developer comes in and says, okay, well, this land is a little bit more polluted also than we thought it was. And so that's going to change the configurations of the development. And then on top of that, as you also know, commodities prices have risen. So the developer then has to conform to what the market is for their product. And all of that is incredibly complicated. And I hope that people understand that. I don't think that they do. And what is frustrating to me is when the developer has to pivot and change their idea of what can go there in conformance with the contract and the documents, that people then come at us and say, well, this is fraudulent, or something is being hidden from us. And all we're doing is reimbursing costs so that, again, people can have affordable places to live. Okay, that's really frustrating for me, Anne Marie.
I
just
mean,
make one
I haven't
point?
come here and I haven't heard of anyone coming here and saying this is fraudulent, but okay.
I have.
What the word that I heard is bait and switch.
Bait switch. Yeah.
That's the word that I've heard over and over.
Fraud was used in the.
So anyways, I'm
At
just
Plymouth.
coming to you
I've been
guys.
accused of
And I don't
Yeah,
want, I don't
I don't
want
wanna
to
go
think that I'm
into all
taking this
this.
out on you. I'm just trying to explain.
No, I came to you with some very specific things relative to the Affordable Housing Trust.
Yep.
Trust me, if you want me to go into the project and how I think I can go on that tangent too, but that isn't pertinent to you guys.
Sure.
So I've tried to make sure that my comments to Planning Board are specific to them. In Select Board, I've made them specific to Select Board and our purview, and I'm here just for those things. I don't need to talk about the whole project.
Appreciate
Happy to do it offline, but, okay, so I'll leave it at that then. Thank you.
Thanks.
And
So I'd
Colleen,
like
I'll
to
get this
just
back to you.
make one
Thanks.
other point in response to what you said, Anne Marie. I think the board or the trust could take a lesson learned from this project and apply it to 25 Worcester Street.
Sure.
And because I think about the how that RFP and how that project evolved. We started with some concept designs, which are sort of four very different things. We had a lot of public input. We went through a whole RFP process. We had a single response that qualified under the RFP. We granted that RFP, and the developer came back with what they thought was a feasible development that was in line with the RFP, which is different than much of what we had looked at before. So if you're somebody that tuned into those original meetings and had ideas about what that might look like, it's different now.
Yeah.
What's actually been proposed is substantially different than what was originally there, but it's compliant with the RFP. So I guess my advice to the trust is, let's do the review with 25 Worcester and go through the same process. Let's get all of the corporate documents, the RFP, and maybe a little bit of a narrative on how this thing has changed over time. Because especially with the housing trust, we're going to have a fair amount of churn,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Because we've got shortest turns, and people. It's because it's volunteer and. There's a certain amount of time commitment or whatever. We need some through lines of narrative that people can understand.
I think that's one of the hardest things about this is the amount of time it takes to get a development done doesn't really match up with how long people spend on this board. So if you ask me, what date was the agreement entered into? I'm like, Jesus,
or how long people pay
was
attention.
I even on the trust at that point?
Which
Yeah.
agreement? The grant
nobody-
agreement?
The grant agreement.
That
That
was
was
23.
that was
Was it?
first
Yeah.
baby.
We went.
Colleen knows.
We went
What
over
was it?
that for.
Was that just last year? It
May
was like 5 years
Yeah.
ago. Yeah.
We went back and forth with Colleen on that months, meeting after meeting.
Kathleen.
Yeah, Kathleen.
I
sorry.
tended to be a remote.
And it,
I
I
was
mean,
looking
it
at you.
is the just so you know that I was correct. It's the purchase and sale, the original
Yeah.
purchase and sale that indicates market rate apartments with, there is a range, 50 to 143 granted. But
Right.
the low end is 50, so.
But the high
with
end gives us
retail.
more apartments.
For sure, with retail on the first floor and adequate parking, the project. So that is the original PNS. It's very specific, but, okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, any other questions? Anybody online?
I will just say, from experience in the architectural world, these type of development projects, specifically affordable housing, I was working at a firm when I first started in architecture 13 years ago, and it just finished.
Yeah.
So it's
Yep.
a long process.
Yep.
So that's a concern that I have.
Yeah.
you know, 25 Worcester,
That's
we looked at the
typical.
timeline and we're talking about people moving in 27, 28.
That's a lucky timeline.
That is, if everything goes
Yeah.
perfectly. Yep.
I mean, I was joking with Matt about this. Like, I proposed that land swap back in 2020, and little did I know at the time that I would probably be eligible to live in an assisted facility by the time it was done. It was not on my radar. So,
There's a hand on Zoom.
sure. Who do we got? Patty Eppinger.
Hey, Patty Eppinger, 44 South Street. It's actually an informational question for Fiona, just so I understand. When you mentioned that you'll be having a decision on the 23rd, is that actually a planning board hat? Because I know you wear a lot of hats versus a trust decision. I just wasn't clear what it is we're waiting for.
Yep. Mr. Chair, if I may respond to that. Yeah,
Sure.
thanks, Patty, for the question. So that's that is a planning hat, specifically planning board hat. So now that we've closed the public hearing, I've been directed to draft a decision which will incorporate, all of the findings, exhibits, waivers, and all of the information throughout that public hearing process for the board to vote on with conditions.
Thank you.
Yep,
Thank you.
no problem.
So, and just quickly to follow up on that, because I know that Patty had mentioned litigation last night. This is not unusual. It's straight out of every single community in Massachusetts has had to deal with this. I'm frankly surprised we haven't had to deal with it yet, except that this is the first time this Affordable Housing Trust has had something that's close to completion. I will just say the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts issued a slip opinion back in January of 2023, setting the standard by which a court may require a plaintiff appealing the approval of a special permit to post a bond. So if you want to file a lawsuit after the issuance of a special permit, you have to pony up some money. And the cost for those is usually in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So be prepared. Get your checkbook out if that's what you want to do. But also, look, I'll tell you, we've invested $800,000 in this project so far.
Oh, yeah, just over 800,000, not
Yeah.
including tonight, if we.
So I would be looking to reimburse our costs and expenses should this project go south. Certainly, and I don't want to speak for GSX, but I can tell you as a litigator who just spent 5 days at Suffolk Superior Court winning a trial, I would bring a counterclaim for tortious interference with advantageous business relations, and also a claim for malicious prosecution. And I know that GSX is probably expecting about $10 million in profit off of this. If the bad faith claim is upheld, that's $30 million. In addition, I would tell you that the discovery process for a claim like that will be wide ranging. I would be looking for communications, correspondence, text messages, everything and anything that had to do with the plaintiffs, elected officials around here. And you can't delete those. I'm a trial lawyer. I know where to find them. There's no such thing as a deleted text or an email. And it would be a long and drawn out process. And I would be in your life for several years. And I assure you that you don't want that. So, nevertheless, that was just all informational. Hand raise again.
Yeah, I just want to say, Chair Prisby, that I hope those comments are not directed specifically to me and that you're making general comments about what someone's approach might look like, because I will say that was a little offensive. So again, I hope you're just putting it out there. Yes, I made a comment. I can't say that I made a comment that I was moving anything forward.
Well, then it would be directed at anybody who's moving anything forward.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, hearing on anything. Anybody else got anything for 1727 Upton Street? All right, let's move on to review of town's audit of financial transactions. What do we got?
Do you want me to cover that?
Sure.
So I'll just read the words right from the memo that the board got. It says the accompanying memo you'll find an Excel workbook containing the audited areas of the Affordable Housing Trust as it relates to the Town of Grafton financial departments. The audit found no anomalies relating to any of the Affordable Housing Trust transactions within the Town of Grafton's financial policies and procedures. All transactions followed the Town of Grafton safeguards and were processed consistent with our accounting processes. And then there's some other language relative to the all the account numbers and transactions that were provided. But that's the gist of it.
All right, so we did a good job.
We were,
Or
Yeah.
we did our jobs. I
we
guess.
did
Yeah.
the job.
As usual. High fives all around. Nice work.
And this is in addition to the annual audit that we're going to be starting in.
Right,
this
right.
week.
I
This is-
I do want to. I just want to touch on that for a minute. I mean, to be honest with you, I had no idea in the years that I've been
because I
doing
haven't
this.
been on the trust before. Nobody. knows.
That's actually true, Colleen. Thank you very much for being here. You know, way back in the day when it was just me and Peter Adams and John Carlson and Deb Kachiver, it was like, oh, no one cared. But, you know, I'm glad though. I mean, we're getting to a place where this group has matured. We're getting projects done. Like Matt said, we're learning from these things. We'll carry these practices forward, and you know, obviously comply with everything that we need to comply with. So that's good. All right. So next, consider grant agreement with Community Preservation Committee.
So I'm going to jump on this one. So I'm also on CPC, and there is information out there saying that there should be a grant agreement between the two groups because we are taking CPA money, and just to ensure that the money that we receive is being tracked properly, spent properly, and within the bounds of CPA. And so CPA actually provided a sample what grant agreement could look like, and then we can tailor it to be specific for Grafton. And some of the language they even included was, you know, if you wanted to you know, pay for overhead and having that flexibility. So what I was hoping, if Kathleen was amenable to this, was to maybe review the sample grant and then add as much flexibility, obviously within the scope of CPA. I don't want to do anything we're not supposed to, but if we can, you know, the Pulte money will run out.
Right.
So if we have a grant agreement in place that says we can pay for Amber or staff with CPA money, just like CPA does with their money, I want that in the grant. CPC is in the beginning stages of talking about this too. So I don't know which comes first, chicken or the egg, if we, you know, put a grant agreement that we like and present it to them, or vice versa. I know we have council, CPC doesn't necessarily, they have town, but we're just one step closer to council, so.
Kathleen O'Donnell has her hand raised. Do you want to go ahead, Kathleen? Oh, maybe she's not there anymore. But I would assume, don't want to assume anything, but I would imagine that there are sort of form agreements that we can tailor to our specific needs.
It's in the packet,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's what I was hoping she could look at and then make it, you know, Grafton specific.
I think that's fine because it's such. You want to set expectations with everybody. So if we have the same expectations that CPC has with us, then
Yeah.
I think that's a good
She's
idea.
off mute now.
Well, hey, Kathleen.
Hi. I wanted to apologize for not being on this call. I'm on this zoning board of my town and having a zoning board meeting going on at the same time. But I do want to say that I will look at the CPC grant agreement. I'm on the CPC in my town, and I'm drafting several grant agreements at the moment, including one with our Affordable Housing Trust. So I would appreciate the input from you folks on what you would like to include in that.
Absolutely. You and Colleen should hang out. You
She's
guys
in
both
two
do
meetings
way
right now.
too
I'm, like,
much.
immediately
There's
jealous
way,
of her.
there's way too much going on. All right. Yeah.
I'm trying to learn how to say no, but I'm not doing very well at it. So.
Okay.
And going back to the so if there's some input that we want to have on that, you know, please we'll have a chat afterwards.
Okay. So
Thank you.
What do you want to do for next steps?
So right now, if everyone had a chance to look at the packet, the sample is in there. So maybe everybody can just take some notes and we'll bring it back next month to send off to Kathleen with what
Yeah.
your thoughts are.
Yeah. Why don't we do that? Mark
then-
up a copy.
Great.
See what you think. We'll workshop it at the next meeting, and I guess take a vote if we can. If we can't, we'll do it in November.
Yeah, and I'll meet with CPC in between there to kind of give them a heads up that we're doing that. And, you know, we have an attorney that's kind of steeped in doing these specific agreements right now. So it just seems like and then we'll present it hopefully to them and everybody's excited.
Okay. That sounds good. All right. Anything else on the grant agreement with CPC? All right. Moving on to town planner report.
That's me. So I might have mentioned earlier that it's been a little crazy in my office. a lot of decision writing going on at the moment, and I apologize for dropping the ball and not being as attentive. I know I have follow-up work to do with 25 Worcester Street and Worcester Housing Resources. That is on my to-do list to do in the next month. Once I get through the 23rd, time will free up. I did want to circle back to, I know that the trust has had on past agendas that, not on the agenda for tonight, but goals of what we want to try and implement, zoning changes that we want to try and address at town meeting, that are in the housing production plan. And we talked about this briefly.
I'd like to just move along.
We talked about this briefly at prior meetings, but the housing bond bill, big kind of sweeping changes are coming.
Yeah.
I'm trying to stay as close to that as possible and follow up on it. I did, I've been talking to our building inspector, because, building inspectors really are going to be dealing with kind of this immediately. The law doesn't go into effect until February 2025. But at that time, I think what my professional recommendation would be is for us to work together on getting an ADU bylaw in place. There's been some guidance from the state. There's a new website. It's mass.gov / accessory dwelling units. I'll share that with everybody. It's an overview of the law, a really great breakdown. It has the full text language in there, and it kind of sets, helps communities understand what to expect. Grafton's bylaw is not where it should be in terms of accessory apartments and accessory dwelling units. So I'm looking forward to addressing this at the next town meeting with the trust and kind of doing a deep dive. So I haven't really parsed out what that's going to look like, and if we need to post a meeting for that, going forward, and kind of focusing on that specific topic. But once I get my head around it a little bit more, the legislation is like a month old, and I don't think council has had time to pick it apart per se and give me some like concrete feedback on areas that the zoning definitely needs to address. But I think that it all feeds into each other. The housing production plan talks about ADU specifically as a goal / objective, and I think this is a great thing that we can capitalize on. So I've been keeping my ear to the ground. I've went to the MMLA event that talked about this topic specifically. I've been talking to CMRPC, other planners, a bunch of folks. So happy to answer any questions, but I think for now, let's try and think about ways that we want to discuss and kind of and work on this, and then we can address it in another meeting. But other than that, I have in terms of housing, I've been kind of staying on top of paperwork for permitted projects. The local action unit application for 188 Providence, pass that on to the select board. I've been working with the applicant on making sure they comply with all of their conditions. That's moving along well, and working with building department and ZBA administrator to get Winslow Point units on the SHI. That's closing up. So that's moving forward. Same thing with Fisherville Terrace. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm sure I'm missing something, but yeah, I apologize to the trust. I really do. I want to be more of an asset. It's just been a very, very busy time the past.
No need to apologize, Fiona. I know you've had an incredibly busy month. So that you're doing great. You're doing everything we need you doing more. I think what we'll do, I know I mentioned goals as well. I think maybe let's put it on the agenda for next month. And we'll start to talk about, what we want to do moving forward and where we want to see the trust go over the course of the next 12 months or so. Because we've got 1727 Upper Street, we've got 25 Worcester Street. I think we need to start budgeting, because 1727 is going to take up most of our money. And we need to start thinking about what we're getting from CPC, whether there are other funding sources, and then, what can we do with our goals. So I think that could be a large portion of the meeting in and of itself, just talking about that stuff. And then also, once you get your arms wrapped around the new housing law, let's talk. And then maybe we have a meeting about that. And maybe part of one of our goals is a community forum about how the new housing law can assist people in the Grafton area.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. That's kind of where what I was thinking, once, I think guidance is more guidance from the state is coming. The website was kind of their first, like, here's an intro to what's going to happen. But I think there'll be like model bylaws, all this sort of great stuff that will come. So yeah, no, I agree. And I'm looking forward to doing that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Anything else for you?
Not that I can, no, not at the moment. Happy
right.
to answer any questions though, if I missed anything or anyone wants to talk about something else specific.
All right. Fair enough. Thank you very much. Select board report, Mr. Select Board Person.
Sure. So I already mentioned the audit. And I won't mention that again. I guess the only other thing that I have to bring in the way of an update is in our Tuesday meeting. We talked about a memo that we got from legal counsel. A couple of board members got together with town council and went through all of the questions and concerns that we had heard and asked them to put together a memo to address those questions and concerns from a legal standpoint. So the board voted to release that information. It does need to go through the through town council before it can actually be released. But there were some concerns and questions that related to the trust specifically. So when that comes out, I would just advise that everybody read through that. Kathleen, of course, that'll come to you, and if there's anything that you have in the way of response or any action that the board or the trust might want to take, of course, come with it. So
Can I add to that?
yeah, sure.
It's actually on the website already. On the Affordable Housing Trust website, there's a 1727 Upton project page, and it's the most recent added document.
Oh, great.
So
Awesome.
it is live
Okay,
for anybody that
awesome.
wants to read it.
Cool.
Oh, all right. Well,
Great. And that's I'd encourage the public to go look at that as well, because of most or not, if not all, the questions that are on there came from various constituents, and a lot of them were residents. So if you had specific questions about 27 Upton or the grant agreement that the Affordable Housing Trust has with GSX, I would hope that all of your questions would be answered. It's a lengthy document, and they did, I think, a great job addressing all the concerns.
I mean, I'm looking at it right now, and I'm just question one. Is the P&S agreement, including the extension, currently valid and enforceable? And the answer is yes. That's just question 1 and 2. So, I mean, I take it from, I watched the other night, and I know that you couldn't get into specifics at the time because the document wasn't released. Fair to say, though, you've read and reviewed the document?
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
Yep.
Do you have any concerns about the trust's involvement in this project based on your review of the document?
I have exactly one concern, and that is we need to notify GSX that they need to do whatever filing they need to do and pay whatever fees they need to pay to make sure that the entities that we have entered into agreements with
Are valid.
are valid. And the main concern about that, and it's in the memo, is at some point, presumably when this project moves forward, the P&S is going to transfer that property to them.
Right.
And so we don't want to have any title issues.
Sure. Yeah.
So that really is the main concern that I had reading through that document. I think other board members may have different opinions, but from a trust standpoint, I certainly, that was the only issue that I got from the memo.
Yeah, and I'm sure that will make John aware that he's got to cross his T's and dot his I's and
Yep.
make sure that happens. Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Bill schedule, GSX Solutions LLC, draw request number 15, invoice 24-0500-09. If people have reviewed the invoice and have any questions, comments, or concerns, now is the time. All right, hearing none, I will take a motion.
I move that the board vote to approve draw request 15 invoice 24-0500-09 in the amount of $58,100.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor by roll call. Sarah?
Aye.
All right, Brittany?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Frisbee, aye. All right, motion passes.
We did minutes already.
You are such an overachiever. I can't even stand it.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, then I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded by roll call. Sarah?
Aye.
Brittany?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Frisbee, aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.